Hi Freelancer, welcome to today's episode of the Freelance Blueprint. I'm your host Lizzie, a freelance UX designer and digital nomad. Today we're joined by a fellow digital nomad, Marchela. If you've left your home country for a while or are planning to start your own digital nomad journey, this episode will be extremely valuable for you, trust me. Marchela spent over 8 years as a tax consultant in London working for PwC, one of the biggest accountancy giants. And there she advised executives and business owners on very complex tax issues. But she realized that she wanted to see more of the world and become a digital nomad, so she decided to leave the corporate world and start her own business to finally become location independent. And now she's a tax advisor for digital nomads. In this episode, we're talking about how she created the life of her dreams and how she helps others save a ton of money by legally reducing their taxes. We also talk about cold outreach and how to avoid the cringe and the best amount of time to stay in one place as a digital nomad. All right, let's learn more about her freelance journey. Hi, Marchela. Where are you calling from today?
Hi, Lizzie. So I'm actually calling from the UK today. I swapped the Asian nice and warm weather for rainy, gloomy Manchester. So yeah,
Oh, what are you doing in Manchester?
it's just for the week. I'm actually taking some time to reconnect with my best friend because it's been way too long. So I'm spending just a week here, working from here, and then I'm going to France where the sun is shining.
Nice.
So I'm excited.
Nice. If I wouldn't know anything about you, but would meet the friend you're visiting now, how would they describe you to me?
Oh, interesting. Um, Very curious and I'd say always there. I seem to be one of those people who always messages. When we get so caught up and you feel like, oh my God, nobody's sending me any messages. Everybody's so, doing their life and busy. I seem to be always that person who I don't mind if someone hasn't responded to my messages for like weeks. I'll be the person always checking up. So I feel like that would be the one thing that I would say. And that's why, yeah, I love what I do now because it's such a personal like service, like such a personal work. And yeah, curious and always there, I think is probably what they're going to say.
Nice. So you're also a fellow digital nomad and you help other nomads sort out their taxes and save them a ton of money. How did you figure out your niche?
Very interesting. So I started back as most other accountants do, I guess, at a traditional accountancy firm. So I was in London working for PricewaterhouseCoopers for a long time. Just over 7 years I was with them. And at that point, I was focused on the high net worth individuals. So, I didn't have any choice as to who I work with back then. And then when I left about 4 years ago, I always knew that I wanted to travel. I always knew that I wanted to have complete control over my time, of my location. That was totally my vibe and my dream. And at that point, I didn't know that, I would become this part of the part of this incredible community of digital nomads. Because even at that point, I didn't know much about it. So I started living the life, started meeting incredible people as I was traveling. When I was introducing what I do, who I am, tax obviously came up was the first thing. And it was I very quickly realized that actually people were starting to ask me a lot of questions around taxes because they just didn't have anybody around their circle who was a tax expert, but also living this kind of, nomadic lifestyle. And so I very quickly actually realized that the people that were around me, people that were living the same kind of lifestyle and were also either freelancers or business owners or wanting to do that, were really having a lot of pain figuring out this whole, international tax context in a way, how it all fits in their context. And that's how I actually realized that, okay, the niche that I have to serve are literally the people that are part of my community because they're the ones that are struggling the most and where things are really complicated. Because, if you live, in Germany, Australia, or whatever, it's, any traditional accountant that's good will be able to help, more or less. But when it comes to international taxes, added with this nomadic lifestyle, it gets quite complicated. And that was perfect for me because I obviously love the people because it's totally my vibe. But I also love this complex side of the work because, you can't get more complicated than that. And that's what makes me interested in the field. So yeah, it ticked all my boxes and I could see that the impact was there, so much to say about that because I'm so passionate about it. But in a nutshell, yeah, being part of the community and seeing all these questions coming at me from people from, from all coming from all different home countries is what basically triggered me to say, okay, this is the place where I should be focusing and the people that I should be serving.
I was thinking actually how we met or how I came across you, and I realized it's because you sent me a DM on Instagram.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm not a fan of cold outreach. So, I mean, every now and then you get a message like, oh, you have these things on your website. I offer SEO. It's like a delete. But your message was, it's a problem I have. You can actually help me with that. I didn't know there are people that can help with that. And I talked to many freelancers, and for some, cold outreach has been really great. And for others, they get that same icky feeling when it's like, oh, you're trying to sell someone, even though you can help them. But I was wondering, what is it like for you with cold outreach? And do you have any tips for people when it comes to cold outreach?
I relate a lot to that because when I first started, doing what I do now, I was extremely on the fence with cold outreach because, we start business with this idea that we don't want to be pushy, we don't want to be salesy, we don't want to come across as those people trying to like sell you on something. And I definitely had those limiting beliefs when I first started, and it wasn't until I realized that by not doing what I do, I actually don't serve the people that I actually do genuinely want to help. And if I don't send that cold message, it means that you wouldn't know about what I do and the opportunities that you have. And as a result, if we do work together, save, thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever. And so I really had to make that shift in my mind that if I don't send that message, okay, I'll feel good about myself because, I wouldn't have put myself out there with the, the risk of someone thinking, oh, she's, like she's a bit this and that. But I've taken the mindset shift to think about it as a way of me showing that I'm there, giving the people the awareness that I'm there, because it's not a lot of us who are out there doing something similar, and people don't know. So unless I send that sometimes uncomfortable, at first message, people just can't know. And that's what I try to focus on, as opposed to the fact that, people could think that I'm this and that. Because it totally doesn't come from a place where I'm trying to be pushy. In fact, I can't take a lot of people on every month because it's just such a hands-on service and work. So it's always really about this conversation around, are we really a good fit? So I'll never, the whole idea is not to find clients for the sake of finding clients. That's totally not what it is. But when I realized that I'm looking for people that genuinely will be most impacted by this work and, most need me, it's the search for those clients that fuels me to really outreach to other people and send those cold messages. Yeah. So it's work that needs to be done for those who really, really need the service. But I do appreciate that starting up, it's it's a mindset game that needs to be shifted, which, luckily I did that because that's how I managed to get to people who really desperately needed something like a service like this, but didn't even know that someone out there existing doing something in that industry. And it really works because it does reach the people who are looking for that service.
I find it very interesting because even though I also believe in my service, like, yes, I do UX design. That's one thing. I know that definitely helps my clients. The other thing is when I coach freelancers of how they get started, also the financial part. I'm not a financial advisor, but like, I know what it was like when you start freelancing and you don't know that, oh, there are things that, like, for example, you can expense part of your electricity bill. You can expense your Wi-Fi. Those are things that people don't know at the beginning. And so I know it's useful, but at the same time, even though I know I help someone if they would know that, I still feel cringy to knock on someone's door like, oh, hey, do you want to take my finance course? I'm not a financial advisor, but, and what would you tell someone who is in those same shoes to get that mindset shift of not being cringy, salesy?
I would say, think about the person who desperately is looking for someone like you with your services, like literally right this second, and is spending hours on end talking to people, looking for information on the internet to find you, and they're not able to find you. and they end up going for the wrong person, or potentially buying courses that are far more expensive, when actually you would have been able to help for, half the price, or given like a massive amount of value in addition to that. Like, think about that person who is having a serious pain and really is desperate to at least be talking to you and seeing whether you might be a good fit, as opposed to all the other people who, fair enough, might not be at a point in their journey when they need your service. That's how I managed to reframe it for me, because of course I do get a lot of people, they're not at the stage where they need that service. I mean, full stop. And that's totally fine. Like, as long as you're completely open and, casual in your message, it doesn't have to sound like you're trying to sell something. I think for me, reframing this whole sales process as genuinely an open conversation where we're trying to see, what are you struggling with? Can I help you? And how can I help you best? And is it the fit, when it comes to, energetics? Are we going to have fun working together? Like, all that stuff is just really, like, I look at it as a conversation to be had between, two people who have a lot to, to help each other with. And by focusing on the person who's really in that pain point, that, like, I've had people telling me, like, I literally have the severe fear that I'm going to end up in prison. Or, like, I've had people telling me, I spend literally £70,000 every single year on my taxes, and I actually want to invest in my in a property, but I can't because, I'm working so much for the government. And when you see those people having these really super big pains, it's those people that I focus on when I send these messages, because those are the people that I want to get to and do whatever it takes to get to, because I know that once, if I can help one person get out of that fear of associating taxes with prison, or, be able to invest in that property. Like, honestly, like, it's crazy what some people, it's crazy, like, intense what some people might be going through in their heads when it comes to all these issues. And when I can find one person who's able to finally cut their taxes from 70K to, 10K a year, it really is actually life transforming. And I've seen that again and again. And that's the person that I literally try to imagine in my, like, whenever I send those messages, that is my focus. Everybody else that I have to, send the message and they say, what, not my thing, that's kind of the price to pay to get to be able to give that value to the person who has those beliefs or that need to reduce those taxes. So yeah, it's a process for sure. However, it definitely takes some time to reframe everything and to really appreciate that it's completely normal to feel at the beginning that, it doesn't align completely. But once the belief and that framing around sales changes, and you focus on really your, like we say in business, that ideal person, it kind of makes everything else, all the other sort of ghosted messages okay, because it is part of the journey of getting to the person who really desperately needs you.
And I think you help a lot of people. I remember joining your webinar, and you mentioned that there was a person who, because also, like, when I look into my finances, and it's something many freelancers put on the side, the first thing is like, okay, let's get some money in, let's find a client. But then once they have money, maybe they're busy with client work or other things, but they forget that it's very important to sort out that money, because if you don't, there's a lot of things that you can miss out on, or you work so much to be able to get a certain income. But if you would have managed your money properly, like, for example, sorting out your taxes, sorting out your pension, etc., you probably would have had more at the end of the month. But it's something that a lot of freelancers put to the side.
Yeah.
I also remember the case study that you said from this person who didn't sort out their taxes for 5 years or something. And that was like, what, 100,000, 300,000 pounds in the end that they paid in taxes. And if they would have just sorted it out 5 years earlier, like, what is like the craziest case study of yours when it comes to sorting out someone's taxes?
I would say probably that person is actually one of them. But at the moment, I'm working with a couple from Spain, and they have been having the same sort of situation where they were paying taxes around 60K a year, for the privilege of living in Spain, and they have lived there for 8 years now, and it's absolutely crazy to see how much money would have. A very similar case. So where they would basically have spent 60K every single year for the past 8 years, and we're now getting them to a place where they will effectively become tax-free with a very minimal annual amount paid towards their immigration costs. So I think there are two sides of it. So there's the cases where people pay a lot of taxes in the place where they live, and then they completely go tax-free or like 5% tax on everything that they earn. So they have this massive chunk of saving that completely then changes their life. And there's the other case where people continue to pay taxes in their home country, but they've completely left and don't even live there, which is like kind of not the worst case scenario, because in some instances, for example, with the Spanish couple, at least they spend some of their time in Spain. So, you could see that they're using some of the advantages that those taxes are paying for. But there's a lot of people, and actually someone that I spoke to yesterday, he's been living in Germany, and he's been paying taxes in Germany, but he left 4 years ago. And he's, again, 5 digits tax bills every year. And he's like, I don't even live there. And I've been paying all these taxes for all this time, when actually there's genuinely no reason to be paying the taxes there. He's just, like most of us do, we pack our bags, we leave, and we continue to pay taxes where home is, when actually home doesn't have any right over those taxes anymore. And those are the cases where you definitely see money going down the drain because it's going towards the inappropriate government, because you no longer live your life there. So those two cases are the two that are very, very common, and I see all the time. People that are just paying 50, 60, 70,000 a year of taxes, even less, doesn't matter how much the amount actually is. They just don't spend any of their time there, and they just accumulate those taxes, those bills, when actually 5 years later, when they realize, it's like, hold on a moment, I've spent like 6 digits on taxes that I didn't even have to pay for. But then how do you go and claim that from the government? Like, that's a battle, like hard to win, almost impossible to win. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's very impactful and painful sometimes when people realize that, it would have been good if they did that years ago, because it would have meant having, at least 100K more in their savings, which is a realization that a lot of people are having a little bit late. But I mean, it's never too late, but it would have been better if it was done earlier. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about my situation, so hopefully I know a little bit more in a month or two. But it's definitely something I need to figure out, because yes, I'm Austrian, but I pay taxes in the UK because I lived there for so long. And the UK is like, I go there every now and then, but I spend maybe 5 days a year there, or maybe a little bit longer. I mean, maybe I should cut this out, because I think I have to spend 14 days a year minimum to not lose my settled status, but I'm going to edit this out. Anyway, for some people, accounting and taxes is very dreadful, but you made it your main job. So just out of curiosity, is it something that you generally enjoy doing, finances and money and stuff? Or what was it for you that made you go into accounting?
Yeah, very interesting question, actually, because I was talking to my to my best friend about this just yesterday. Yeah, it's very funny. I never had the dream to become a tax consultant. I mean, who does? Like, let's be honest. We don't know about that world until we get into it. So when I went into PwC, I definitely knew that I wanted to get the qualification. So basically, the qualification was 15 horrid exams, and it gives you the certification that you can do anything, essentially anything finance, tax related. So it was a chartered accountancy qualification, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to have that qualification because that then opens up, the world. Like, anything in business, you're essentially prepared for, and you can take that job. So when I first started PwC, I didn't have a clear, I didn't know, that's where I want to end up. All that I knew was that I wanted to work with individuals, like with people, and that I wanted to have the qualification. So tax was kind of the obvious thing, because everything else was focusing on businesses, large corporations, and all that. So my path to tax was driven mainly by those couple of things, like get the qualification and work with people, work with individuals. I very quickly fell in love with it. I mean, it sounds really crazy because, a lot of people do have that fear and hatred around taxes because they can be so daunting. But I mean, I finished, I did management at uni, so I've always been around, numbers, finances, accounting. But taxes really became my vibe when I realized this really personal impact that I was making with all my clients. Because even back at PwC, obviously the numbers there were huge because everybody was 7, 8 figure exec. So for me, seeing that personal impact and getting on calls with people that were they were the CEO of BlackRock, and that was just that's not actually a client that I work with, but that kind of level of persona was exactly what was giving me that internal motivation that I'm actually doing meaningful work. And I really enjoyed it. Like the work itself, I really enjoyed because it was, personal, it was complicated, it was constantly changing, and that kept me excited. I even remember when I left PwC, because I never wanted to leave PwC as as an institution. I just wanted that freedom that they wouldn't give me. And I literally cried on my last day because when I first left, I didn't know that this digital community that I would become part of will have that need. So I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get back to what I wanted to do? Because I really genuinely do enjoy it, and I did enjoy it. So yeah, as crazy as it might sound to a lot of people listening to this, I do enjoy taxes. I do enjoy how complicated and constantly evolving they are. The thing that I do love the most is the impact and that personal connection with the people that I work with, because it's such a personal thing that you do become very close to the people that I work with, because taxes are just such a personal thing that and it touches on so many different things, like what your dreams are, and what are you planning to do with all these savings and all that stuff, and it opens up to really really cool and deep connections, which is what I love the most out of it. So yeah, definitely my bread and butter, and I'm not changing it.
It's always nice to see when someone really enjoys what they're doing. I think you can also tell by just listening to you that you get super excited and passionate about it. I do get every now and then some nomads who ask me, oh, how do you sort out your taxes? How do you do this? Where are you paying your taxes, etc., etc. And I often recommend you. And every now and then someone's like, so how do you know this? They do this right? How do you know? Because I also say I've not worked with her. I had a few conversations with her, but she's also the only person that I know specifically for nomads, the situations we have, the things they need to consider, etc. But they're asking, so how do I know that it's still legal? So what would you tell someone who is a little bit worried that, okay, I'm gonna leave my tax residency and move it to another country, or maybe completely become tax-free if that's an option? I'm not sure. Some people told me about setting up a PLC in America and doing something else, or something which to me feels a bit dodgy, and I'm not sure if that's legal. And I'm also scared that if I would do something and then maybe it's not proper, I don't think I would end up in prison, but I'm scared that I would have to pay a big fine, and that's maybe even higher than the taxes I would have paid. So what would you tell someone who is like, okay, I need this service, I kind of want to sort out my taxes, but is this legal? Is this correct? What do you tell them?
The way that it usually works is that once I know the client situation, we would then look for solutions that actually make best sense. So it's interesting because obviously the whole legality doesn't really come into my space because everything that we do is legal. But yeah, when you touch on this whole idea of do I have to be resident anywhere, it's really actually complicated because it really depends on where you actually come from. Because some countries make it genuinely impossible for you to be a resident of nowhere. So it's actually quite complicated, and that's where I see a lot of people get caught up thinking, oh, well, I haven't spent 183 days anywhere, so, I'm happy. I don't have any, obligations anywhere. And that's where it can get tricky because countries obviously have very different tax residency rules. Between countries, the rules completely change and are different. Of course, the 183 days, we do see it often, but oftentimes countries have a few different ways that you can become tax resident, and the number of days that you spend are only one aspect of it. So that on one side, but also if that whole piece around analyzing your situation doesn't take place and you just jump on that assumption, oh, well, I haven't, spent those days, so I'm fine, that can become potentially risky, because depending on which country you come from, it might not actually be possible for you to be non-resident anywhere. Like South Africa, for example, is a very good case for that. If you look into their law, they say, well, you are tax resident where your permanent place of abode is, whatever that is. But they basically say you have to have this permanent place of home, whether it's in South Africa or not, doesn't matter. But the law there requires you to have it somewhere. And if you don't have it offshore, you fall back onto the South African law. We have a lot of people who trust that, I can't be non-resident of anywhere. And they kind of miss that bit that you could potentially fall back onto your home country. And if it's a home country with high taxes, then you expose yourself to a situation that could be, that could be risky. And you could end up, getting an inquiry from your home country and looking into, years back of your activities and your income. And that is the bit that becomes risky, because you just don't know how hard the tax office can get on the case. Otherwise, it's just so important to do that analysis and really find the solutions that are best suited for your particular situation, because no situation is the same. And I'm part of all the most of the digital nomad groups as well, and I see so many times people coming up with questions, which I understand, around, so what is the best country to incorporate in Europe, or what is the cheapest country in South America, or whatever. That is a fair question to be asking. It's just that you get so many different answers from people that don't know your situation, first off. And most of the cases, they're not in the right place to suggest what would be good in your situation, because they don't know you, they don't know international law, most likely. And if you get off advice received in that way, I would be skeptical as to how secure that is, because there's just so much that goes into it. I mean, I see, me having spent so many years in tax, I do take a lot of time to run down the analysis and to come up with my recommendations, because I wish that it was, a 2-day job and it's done, but it's actually so complicated. It takes me, weeks, sometimes to run through everything. So you can imagine that, one Facebook post with a couple of, with sometimes even 100 comments will not give you that comfort that you're actually making a legal decision, and one that's actually sustainable long term. So definitely, I'd say to everybody to be very cautious around their residency and factor in not just the 183-day myth, but really getting to the details of the countries where they spend, more than a month, and look at really the details of those tax residency rules, and then check what the rules are back home or where they have passports, because they could very well fall back onto those countries by default if they are tax residents nowhere else.
That's very good to know. I think especially for the freelancers and digital nomads, not every freelancer is a digital nomad, but I think a lot of digital nomads are freelancers. So it's definitely something that's useful, because I remember when I started being a nomad and I asked my accountant what it's like if I, like, where do I pay my taxes, etc. And she told me about the 183-day rule, which I didn't know existed, but cool, great. So if I'm spending less than 6 months in a place, I'm fine, which is normally the case. But then also she said, because I was worried if I spent too much time outside of the UK, if I would still maintain my tax residency in the UK, because I was also a little bit worried about my settled statement, etc. And she said it would automatically, if you don't become tax resident elsewhere, fall back to the UK. So you can travel as much as you want. You don't have to worry about not becoming losing your tax residency, because they would claim it back. And also, if you continue paying your taxes anyway, they're not going to say no to your money. So feel free to continue traveling, because that was also my other worry. What if I travel too much, that I can't maintain my tax residency? Another question I have is, do you remember how you got your first client, like your first digital nomad tax client?
Gosh, it was such a long time ago. I think it was a code. I'm trying to remember, but I think it was actually one of those code messages that we talked about at the beginning. I had sent a message. I think that's right. Yeah, I had sent a message, and we obviously had a conversation. The lady was from Canada. It was actually a bit of a back and forth. And back at that time, I was definitely not very experienced. So we had quite a few conversations, and it took actually quite a bit of time. But actually, yeah, it was a code message, that one. If I'm not mistaken, I think so. I had a lot of people that I helped before from the community, but that was all kind of unpaid work because at that point, I didn't run it really as a business. So there was actually a lot of time before I actually started, taking this as a full-time thing, that I would just help people around me basically for free. Because I was just so passionate about giving that away, like giving all that knowledge away and helping people as much as I can. So before I actually had an official, contract signed client, I had that cold messaging campaigns going out. Yeah, it was definitely one of those surreal moments when you see that actually, okay, now everything is kicking off because you see that, people are seeing the impact and the value enough to pay for that service. And yeah, it was a incredible moment.
What did you do after you left PwC before you started offering it as a service? Like when you stopped doing it for free, what did you do in the meantime?
I got a coaching program. So I invested into mentors to actually help me figure out how to do all of this, from a business side of things. So I spent a lot of time kind of revamping my knowledge because I came from a pure, 9-to-5 corporate life. I had no idea how to run a business or, how to keep things simple whilst also doing what I actually wanted to do. Because, at PwC it was very easy to overcomplicate things because everything was so complex. So you feel like you have to be in that state where everything is just overly, layered and, and complicated. Whereas actually, I really wanted to keep things as simple as they can be. So getting mentors, kind of learning the blueprint of what I actually have to be doing to get to where I want to get, but also keep things simple at the same time, was totally what made all of this possible. And still is, because I keep on working with the same people. Yeah, it keeps me well balanced in a way that I don't rush ahead too far, and I don't put too much on my plate as well, which I can become guilty of sometimes. So they keep me well in check. So yeah, definitely investing in mentors has been the biggest positive impact I could have possibly made on this entire journey, because yeah, they've completely given me the roadmap, if you will, to how to make this simple but also sustainable and impactful for people. So yeah, that definitely is the one thing that was the biggest push for me in that time.
Wow. I think it's so useful when you go into a coaching program, even if it's because different coaches might have different pricing. Sometimes you just can afford a group coaching, or sometimes you can afford one-on-one coaching. And for me personally, it's also been so useful. Like what you say, I'm the kind of person that puts a lot on their plate. Everything. And
Yeah.
I'm doing the podcast now, I'm doing client work, I'm doing the newsletter, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And it's oh, you also have to do content. You also have to,
Yeah.
and it's oh my God, and I'd never know where to start. And now what I learned from my coaches is concentrate on one thing, get the ball rolling, and then bite off the next chunk. But yeah, don't fill your plate too much. What would you say? I mean, you kind of said it already, that it was one of the best investments, but because I still think there's a lot of people that are not that into getting a coach or a mentor, or they're a little bit hesitant if it's worth the investment. Would you recommend that any freelancer should get a coach or a mentor, or do you think it's better to do things in their own way?
I definitely wholeheartedly believe that if you surround yourself with people who are a few steps ahead of you, you get there far faster. And I've seen that with the people that I work with. For me, it was a very easy decision to make because I have followed Tom and Anna, my mentors, for a long time before I actually bought their service. So basically they used to be travel bloggers, and they transitioned over 10 years to do more business. They basically developed different businesses in that time. And when we started working together, they had this, incredible coaching program that they were just starting. It hadn't even launched properly, but I knew so much about them as people, and I knew that, they had the integrity and the professionalism and the experience to be able to get me to where I wanted to go. So for me, having that history with them and was extremely important in making my decision very fast. So I knew that whatever happens, they will get me to where I wanted to go. Oftentimes these programs are, they cost a little, right? So I do get it that there's resistance often to making that jump. But I definitely believe that we should all be getting mentors in the areas of our lives that we really want to improve and improve fast. Because sure, I could have probably get to where I am today without their help, but for sure not within that timeline. It's definitely given me the strategy and the roadmap that has cut the timelines of everything happening so short. And it's, as freelancers, and especially, as people working on our own thing, we can become so lonely that having the mentors and the community around them that I'm now part of is really giving me that family, if you will, that understands exactly what I'm going through, and I can openly share my challenges and my difficulties, or if I've had a bad week or whatever. And that in itself has really allowed me to step up my game and not get caught up in insecurities or doubts or bad self-talk and all of that just holds you back so much. And even just for that, even just for mental uplift that I've gone through in that time, and all those things that we talked about around the code messaging, before I would have been like, absolutely no, like this is totally out of my comfort zone. Like I don't want to be the salesy girl that just wants to come across as wanting clients or anything like that. But they allowed me to. They'll help me completely reframe that whole thing, and so many other things around money mindset and sales and the value that I want to create. And so even just for that mindset element, it has been 100% worth it for me. And I do think that if you find the right people to take you there and to be doing that journey with, it's 10 times your potential in that time. So yeah, 100% I'd say go for it. Make sure that the energetics are there and that you really feel like you can really have that open and deep connection with your mentors, because that's so important. But definitely find those people that can bring you there, because it just cuts out so much time reframing your mind by yourself, that even just for that piece, it can be so transformative.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I had different coaches in different aspects. Some were more for business, some were more for content, and some I just purchased because they are in a different stage. They're like a couple of years ahead of where I want to take my business. So it's more like, I'm just gonna sneak in how they do it. And it's so interesting what you say with the energetics, because you just have to click with them. You have to also have the same values, because sometimes I would be in a coaching call and it would just be about money. It's just about money. And it's like, I don't like that. Yes, of course, it's nice to earn more, but also I want this reward. Like what you said, you actually help people. You see that at the beginning, that people have this amount of taxes to pay, and now they don't. And now they have £60,000 a year more in the bank account. And they can now fulfill the dream of buying a house or taking half the year off or whatever it is. And it must be so rewarding to be able to watch that, and also knowing you help them achieve that. For me, coaching has to work not just for the money side of it, but also for the reward. Like when I coach someone, it's so nice when they're like, I quit my job, I got a freelance gig. It's because it also puts me back to the beginning when I started freelancing and I got that first client, or I got that first testimonial, or like super nice email, the first client that reached out to me rather than the other way around. And it's just such a nice feeling to see that you helped someone get there. And it's not that they wouldn't, like you say, like they probably achieved that in their own time, but you help them get there faster so they can live the life they wanted earlier. And that's the nice thing about coaching as well, because I feel like the coaches also get something out of it. It's not just because that's the other thing. I felt a little bit guilty when I was getting coached. It's like, oh, I'm bombarding them with my problems. But then once I started coaching, it's like, no, this is so much more exciting on the other end. So yeah, if anyone is listening, I would highly recommend to get a coach, whatever area it is that they need help with. When it comes to freelancing, what do you feel like are your biggest challenges right now?
I'd still say finding that balance between everything, because I do, because obviously the work that I do just takes, it's a very hands-on work, and it does take quite a bit of time to get everything done. Coming from PwC, where we used to work, 10, 11 hours each day, I can very easily fall into, working ridiculous hours So finding that balance still between, enjoying my nomad life and, enjoying the locations where I am, because I do change location too quite often. So finding that balance between, doing the things that I want to do for the business and, the clients, I've definitely become far more aware, and keeping things simple within the business has been extremely important for that. But some days I can also, get into the wheel of just working, and then, come the weekend, and then I can just on the weekends I try to never work too much. So at those days I take off, and then I realize, oh my God, the week has just flown by. So yeah, finding that balance is still, I would say, something that I need to work on a little bit more. But I do enjoy it. That's the thing. Like if I didn't enjoy what I do, it would have been so much easier, because I could just, close my laptop at 7 o'clock or like 6 o'clock and be done. But I do enjoy it so much that I can sometimes, spend too much time on the screen. But having said that, my mom had an operation last week, and still having that, freedom to take the time off when I absolutely want to take it off has also been incredibly rewarding for me, because that's why I kind of went into this whole, entrepreneurial journey at the beginning, to have, that control over my time. So having said all of this around the balance, some days when it does get to, being there for my people, it feels really rewarding to see that I can have that. Whereas obviously before I had to, request days off and all of this crazy stuff. So yeah, it definitely has been a good reminder last week that, okay, I'm still there, I can still have my time at work, but when I have to switch off and be there for my people, I can take that time off, and I have the freedom to do it, which is very liberating.
Is your mom okay? Did everything go as planned?
Yes, luckily, yes. She's doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason for me why freelancing is so exciting as well, because you can do what you want to do when you want to do. And I'm a person that really enjoys working late at night, because then I know I don't have something else to do after. I've done my day, I've done the stuff that I want to do for myself. Now I can just concentrate on work. And it happened more than once that I might be doing something until 1 or 2 a.m. because I'm in the zone, similar to what you said. Like, you're just in the zone and you enjoy what you're doing. And then only when I notice that I'm getting too tired, that's when I'm like, oh, I should probably go to bed now. And I had this conversation with my sister recently. So every now and then my family and I meet in the country I'm going, or when I know they're going on holiday somewhere, I have the flexibility to just meet them where they're at. And because my mom is Thai, they fly to Thailand a lot. I met them in Thailand, and my sister had 4 weeks off from work because she had so much overtime and other things. And she was so excited, 1 month, not looking at her laptop, just doing whatever she wants and getting paid for it. And part of me was a bit jealous because, oh wow, 1 month not looking at my laptop. But then part of me was also thinking I would get bored not doing anything for a full month, because even if I wouldn't have to
Yeah.
do my UX work, I would probably do some podcast recordings or do something else or update my whatever it is. I always find something. There's always something to do when you freelance. It never stops. How do you tackle this? Like you mentioned it before, finding this balance of wanting to enjoy the place where you're at, seeing all the sunsets, going to the ocean or skiing or whatever it is where you are, and work. What worked for you?
For me, keeping the weekends off has been one of the things that has really kept me grounded, because my partner is also an entrepreneur. So we found that having the weekend where nothing happens, like work related, or at least not much of it, unless sometimes I would send messages, but nothing too evolving, nothing too time consuming. And keeping the weekends off has really given us that slow down, that okay, whatever happens during the week, the weekends come, we go on a trip, we hike up a mountain. Summers we spent in Bansko in Bulgaria, and we love mountains a lot. So in the weekends we keep for hiking when we're there. So wherever we are, where we try to have those weekends really for ourselves, because indeed it can be very all-encompassing when you're in your own business and you have so much going on. Over Christmas, I think was the first time in actually quite a bit of time that we took a nice good holiday of like a whole week, and I realized how important that is, because we came back extremely, rejuvenated and so excited to be back at work. So it is important to take that time away to just, detach from everything, take a step back, take a bit of a bird's view on everything that's going on. So in the summer, we'll definitely be taking more days off to just disconnect to reconnect. And now, with keeping things simple, the good thing is that, as long as you can produce content in advance, schedule it, you can't have that opportunity where you can switch off for a week and just have, posts that are scheduled coming in, so you don't feel you've completely disappeared. Having taken that time around Christmas and seeing how much it really helped us as we started the new year, we're definitely going to be more conscious around taking time off, like legitimate taking time off, because it does help us drive the businesses forward far better and far smarter, because you actually have the time to think about things. But yeah, of course, like in the day-to-day, we're also guilty of losing track of time when you're in your zone. And but yeah, the weekends 100% they're off.
Yeah, it's definitely something a lot of freelancers don't do, because they think, I'm just going to go on holiday once this project ends, and there will be a break of where I don't have clients, so that's when I'm going to go on a trip. But that's what I thought when I started. And then I think it was like 2-3 years into my freelance career when I realized I've been booked back to back. I never really had that break. And then I think I had like 1 or 2 weeks here and there, but that's when I then updated my portfolio. That's when I then was looking for other clients. So I never really went on a holiday. But at the same time, this nomad lifestyle, I don't feel like I need that holiday as much as when I was in a permanent job, because now we're working remote, we get on this flight. So there are like these activities that you feel like you're on holiday anyway. And also you just sit by the beach in the evening, watch the sunset, and then maybe you go back to work, or maybe you didn't work until then and you start, whatever it is. I feel like there's so many pieces of holiday in our day-to-day routine that it doesn't feel as much needed to have this big break. But definitely schedule a break. Even no matter if you have clients or whatever, you can just tell them, I'm on holiday then, and most of the times they're fine with it, unless they have a very urgent deadline. But yeah, so that's definitely a good thing that you are taking time off. If you would have to do it all over again, like if you were to start over today, would you still do it? And if so, how?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I definitely am fortunate to be able to say that I built my dream lifestyle. There's nothing really in it that I would change. I think I probably would have spent more time planning my trips, because obviously when I first started, I wanted to see everything. I wanted to, hop from place to place and not have that fear of, time is passing and, I'm in one place, like I have to be doing more. So I think if I had a bit of if I would have to redo it again, I'd have a bit of a more structured plan as to where I'm going to spend the time, because for sure at the beginning we had a lot of trouble finding last minute accommodation, and booking flights at the very minute, and have Airbnb canceling at the couple of days before you're supposed to move in. So all those like life admin things, what at the beginning took quite a bit of mental space, because we always seemed like we were looking for accommodation. We always seemed like we were booking last minute flights, and that added just too much, not anxiety, but too much hustle, that I think had we had a bit of a more of a, half a year plan, we would have been able to, be a little bit less pressured on finding, decent accommodation, and really have that slow and not as hectic transition from, having your home in London, full year round, to essentially feeling like you're constantly searching for the next thing. So that's the one thing that I would say I would probably spend a bit more time planning about if I was to do it again. And I do say to people that come to me, with general, like, how would you start it? It's really plan a little bit more ahead. And we've become far better at this now. Like we now know that after here, I'm going to France, I'm spending a month in France, and then I'm going to Bansko in Bulgaria, and I'm spending the whole summer there. So, now there is a plan, because we realized how much it's taken us to not have one. But yeah, early days, we were definitely we were definitely hopping around, which was exhausting.
Yeah, I feel you. For me, it was the opposite. I actually planned 2 or 3 months at my first destination. And then you make so many friends there, also with people that genuinely live there, that it feels so hard to say
Yeah.
goodbye. And then you go to the next place
Oh,
and it's
yes.
the same over again. And then the thing that happened was I felt like I was staying in one place for too long, or I planned too far in advance, maybe like 6, 7, 8 months in advance, that when you then meet people traveling that you really click with and they're like, oh, we're going to Greece, do you want to join? You end up being like, oh, I already have the rest of the year planned, but we can do something in 2023. And then like you continue planning so far in advance, but then maybe something changes, maybe someone's getting married, so you have to change your flight, this, that. So then last year I was too spontaneous. I only planned 1 or 2 months in advance and I said yes to too many things. And I ended up changing location every 2, 3 weeks, which, like you just mentioned, the amount of time you spend finding accommodation. Then also it's the other thing that when you go to a new place that people forget, you have to figure out how to get home. You have to figure out how the public transport system works. You have to figure out, is it safe? Not everyone always speaks English, so you're also kind of learning a new language. All of these kind of things that take up so much mental space that exhaust you. What for you is the perfect time for the digital nomads out there, or the people that are trying to or thinking about it? What do you think is the perfect time to stay in one place?
So for me now, 3 months is my minimum. And of course, that doesn't always happen. That is kind of my ideal. But 3 months for me is now the perfect time to find accommodation that's not, Airbnb sort of very short rent, but also it gives me the time to connect with the community. Because I've realized that for me, the people are really the ones that make my stay in a place memorable and enjoyable. And I like meeting people wherever I go. And of course, for some people, it's like crazy long time. But that has become for me the kind of the optimal, to not feel like I'm rushing, to not feel and to have the time to really connect with the people, the place, find the best coffees, find the places to work from. Yeah, for me, that's like that slower mode of nomadic has been the version of it that's sustainable. Because I used to spend 1 month at a time in a place, and that was just too hectic. And also, I think spending like 4 years doing that, I definitely start to have that feeling of, I want to slow down. I want to have, a place where I feel like, like I'm going back to a place that feels like home. I've started going back to places far more than I anticipated. And before I thought that, I'll be hopping to a new place all the time. But now I've definitely changed that to, I've gone back to Bali, I've gone back to Thailand, to Chiang Mai, I've gone back to Bansko. We keep on going back there. That's our base. We keep going back to Biarritz, the area in France that we like a lot. So we've created these really good communities in those areas that we now have more the need to go and reconnect with the people and in those places, as opposed to necessarily, discovering new places, new 4 places, say, in a year. So that slower mode of travel has basically kept us sane and productive. I do need my routine, my morning routine. And, when you keep on constantly changing places, it's just so much harder to keep yourself in check. So for productivity and just for my, mental health and physical health, it has been really important to just take a step back and slow down a little. And I love it. I prefer it like that, because it gets me connected to the place and the people, and that's what I love about it the most.
Oh, that's super nice. And I feel you with that. I don't think I've done 3 months in one place other than Thailand, mainly because my mom, But most of the time for me, what I think is a good sweet spot is pretty much 2 months, because that's when I'm not sick of a
Okay.
place, but I feel like I've seen what I wanted to see and I want to come back. So maybe I should try 3 months where I feel like, okay, I'm ready to go now. I've not had that situation. I always feel like, like leaving is the hardest part, even though you're so excited for the next place. I think leaving is very hard.
Yeah.
Before we end this conversation, there are 3 questions that I ask every guest. And one is, would you ever go back to a permanent job?
Never. I don't never say never, but I don't see that happening ever again. And the thing is, I've had the best of it. Like I feel like my experience in PwC was the best employment I genuinely could have had. Like I loved everything about it. And so I don't see myself going back there, and I don't see any other place that would be better fit. So I don't see that happening. I love this. It challenges me far more than PwC did, actually. So yeah, no, I don't think so.
Nice. And if you could go back in time to the girl or woman that you were, who just left PwC, who was crying when they quit their job, what would you today tell her?
To not worry as much as she did. I obviously had the bravery to do it, but I was worried whether things will how things would turn out. And yet I would definitely tell her to just trust that everything will be fine. I'm fortunate to say that life hasn't been better for me. So yeah, to tell her to just calm down, trust the process, and appreciate that it takes time. The whole journey takes time to settle into it and to really start feeling like you've done what you really wanted or needed to do for yourself. Because I did have moments where I put too much pressure, wanting things to happen too fast, and for every time that we go to a place to find the perfect location, or for every time that I talk to a client, like I had such high standards for everything, and I was expecting everything to happen so much faster. And slowing down and just realizing that it takes time, and it's okay to take time because you learn so much in the process, is what I'll tell her to keep reminding herself on a daily basis.
And if you think, let's travel to the future, 5 years from now, what do you think your future self, imagine where you would be, wherever your business might be, which places you will have traveled by then. Maybe you will have a base. Like you said, you feel like you want to settle somewhere. Maybe you go a bit slower. Whatever it might be, what do you think your future self would tell you today?
Take more breaks. I would say keep on experimenting. Keep on experimenting with the different ways that the business can grow. Because I've kept it very simple for now, and that's still the plan for the near future. But I become so focused on not complexifying things that I think future me would still tell me to give it a shot at different things. I started doing the masterclasses because I wanted to branch out in that way as well, to really just try different ways that I can serve my community without fearing that I might complexify things, like finding that balance and really testing different channels of getting information out there, and not fear that by adding a masterclass every month or whatever, or by adding like a 101 international taxes course for nomads or something like that, will necessarily make things too complicated, because it doesn't have to be. So just have that experimenter in me to keep on serving in different ways, or at least trying to see if there's better ways to serve the community without necessarily fearing that by adding too much I'll lose track, or things will slow down or anything like that. Because I appreciate that not everybody will be 100% fit for the offer that I have now. So opening up to other ways that I can serve will be the thing that I eventually will have to do, will want to do, so I can have a greater impact and touch more people and help more people. So keeping that in mind and not fearing adding more to my stack of what I do and what I offer.
Nice. Thank you so much. This was such a nice conversation. I also learned a lot about taxes now, so I'm probably going to hit you up after. So if any of the listeners wanted to learn more about you, where can they find you?
So, like I said, I keep things simple for my people and for myself. So Instagram is the place where people can obviously see my content, but also get in touch, say hi. I do respond to all my DMs. So for sure, you can find me on Instagram. It's Marchela, Georgieva. And I think you probably have a link somewhere to it, so people can find. But yeah, Instagram is definitely the place. And yeah, look forward to chatting to anybody who's on the journey, whether just a nomad lifestyle or taxes. If that's something that we can chat about as well, sure, of course, I'll be more than happy to. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a great time chatting about not just taxes but also the lifestyle. Yeah, I absolutely love that topic. So I'm glad that we had that time to talk about it. And yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming today, Marchela. Have a good day.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye.
This was such an insightful conversation with Marchela. I definitely learned something new about international taxes, and I'm sure you did too. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Marchela. I definitely did. If you're a nomad who wants to sort out their taxes, you'll find a link to Marchela's Instagram in the show notes. If you liked this episode, please leave a review and hit the follow button. This helps the Freelance Blueprint to get suggested to more people who could learn from these insights. Feel free to share this episode with your freelance and digital nomad friends. And that's all from me, and I can't wait to have you join again next week. Bye!